Hubbard discovered the lowest common denominator of existence, that being survival. So you're trying to survive, the person next to you is trying to survive, animals are trying to survive, and anything around you living, and even the material universe itself, as L. Ron Hubbard discovered, has this urge or this drive to survive. So how does that apply in a healthy relationship? Well, if we're looking at yourself wanting to survive and the other person in the relationship wanting to survive, then it would only make sense that you helping them to survive would be healthy. It would help you and it would help the other person. And that therefore brings into this whole concept, which I'm also going to touch on, which is that of help. So, how does your survival and the survival of someone else go together? Well, you may have seen some people, one person in the relationship is doing fantastic. They're getting promotions at work and they're having and achieving all their goals that they would like. And then you might see someone else in the same relationship not doing well, perhaps sick all the time, failing, getting in fights, getting in arguments with people and this sort of thing. Now, you might sort of look at those two separately and say, well, he's doing well and she's not, but, how is the relationship? Well, you can kind of guess that if one person in the relationship is not surviving well, it is going to affect, even to a small degree, the other person. And it's the same thing. If you've got someone in your family who is not doing well, even though you're not having perhaps a partnering relationship with that person, they're in your family, and it's not nice to see people around you not surviving well. So one of the principles, of course, is helping others around you to survive better. And that in itself will only help enhance your own survival. So when that help of survival is two-way, this is another concept, is exchanging in equal amounts or at least freely and not inhibited, then you can see how that would contribute to the health or the positivity in a relationship. Now, when I say help, we're looking at things like, in helping them to survive, of course, we're looking at things like, are you helping that person achieve their goals? Or is that person helping you achieve your goals? It certainly can occur from time to time that you are involved in a relationship. It doesn't have to be, an intimate one or as partnering in a way, that another person is interested only in themselves doing well. And they aren't necessarily concerned, worried, or bothered in the slightest when you're not doing well. So that is potentially one of the things for you to look at. If you're not doing well, does your partner, does the person that you're having a relationship with, do they get interested in the difficulties that you are having and looking at how you can help solve those, or how they can participate in helping you to solve those problems? That could be an indicator for you to know that you're not in a healthy relationship. And you can even see it in your work colleagues and people that are around you. Is if you're having difficulties with something, who comes to you and says, hey, do you need help with that? Is there anything that I can help you with? Because that person that comes to you in that way and understands that your well-being and your survival in doing better in whatever activity it is actually participates and enhances their own survival. A person that recognizes that certainly has at least one of the foundational points for having a healthy relationship. So that point of exchange is very important. So in addition to that, not only achieving goals, and this brings me to another point, do you know what their goals are? And we're going to talk about communication shortly. Do you have you expressed to the other person in the relationship what your goals are? So if neither of you know what each other's goals are, they're not being communicated, or they're being, held to yourself because you're embarrassed or concerned in some sort of way that they might be belittled or put down, or at least, you're veered from them, then how healthy can that relationship be? Because after all, what is life full of but lots of different purposes or goals? And they are the things, as you would learn from if you understood or read this book, The Way to Happiness. Achieving of little goals and overcoming obstacles is actually part of how you attain happiness throughout life. So, going over this again, this whole point of helping and this whole point of exchange, is it two-way? Is it free? Is it not inhibited? Do you know what the other person, your partner, whoever else it might be, do you know what their goals are? Do you know what their difficulties are? Is that person interested in your difficulties and helping you overcome them? If the goals are not known, then how can you help that other person? That could be a missing part, and that would be something to add to make it a healthier relationship. Another thing, of course, is that people are living in an environment. What is the environment like? Some people often don't recognize that the environment is not positive for one. You know, people at work, they get into their work and they're doing certain things, whether it be on the computer or they got their tasks at work, or maybe it's in their sporting club, or maybe it's even in the home. Recognizing that the environment can affect one and can reduce one's survival is another important point for you to consider when you're wanting to make sure that a relationship is going well or has a healthy foundation. Okay, so just summarizing those concepts there, we're looking at survival. How is your survival? Because that's what you're trying to do. You are trying to survive. And what is your partner or the other person in the relationship? What is their survival like? And are you reciprocating? Are you exchanging with efforts or intentions, you know, resulting in actions, resulting in better survival between the two of you? That is definitely a foundation of a healthy relationship. And that brings me, of course, to, again, 2 points that are in this book. And you have heard of perhaps the golden rule, which is something on the line of do unto others as you would have others do unto you, that sort of thing. Well, L. Ron Hubbard expands upon that and has 2 rules that relate to that. And it basically is about you trying to treat others as you would like them to treat you, and trying not to do things to others that you would not like them to do to you. So it expands upon that golden rule in that kind of way and makes it a little bit more easier to fulfill with the wording that's actually presented in that book. So I bring that up again, and I'm going to come back to this point of communication. Communication in a relationship is probably the most important factor to address or to have in or to be present in a strong or good quality and quantity in order for you to have a healthy relationship. After all, you may have an affinity, there may be emotional attachment, there may be this feeling of liking or love for the other person, but if you don't communicate about it, then you're definitely going to be left lacking in strengthening that emotion that exists. And coming back to these things like survival, help, and exchange, as I mentioned before, if you don't know how the other person is trying to survive, if the other person doesn't know how you are trying to survive, you know, what are your goals? What are your difficulties and obstacles that are coming up on the way to your survival or achieving of your goals? What sort of environment are you living in or experiencing when you're away from that person? All of those difficulties, the considerations, the ideas, the goals, the plans, if they're not communicated, then all of those points of exchange and help are actually very difficult to achieve because you don't know what they are. So this point of communication. Now, what do I mean by communication? Well, I'm not talking about in a relationship where you establish what the weather is like in that day. I'm not talking about communication where you talk about the idle sort of chit-chat that you might if you sit beside someone on the bus, or you deal with a colleague or a person in a shop that you are having a very short, meeting with, or you come across them in, very minor parts of life. That sort of social chit-chat isn't necessarily what I'm talking about in a healthy relationship as the type of communication that you want. And certainly that sort of stuff does have its place. You can certainly start a conversation, talking about the weather. You can, get into communication when someone is upset by bringing up small or minor things about the environment just to engage a person in conversation. But no, what I'm talking about is real communication about those types of things I mentioned. The goals, the ambitions, the dreams, all of that sort of stuff. And then, as I mentioned, the golden rule, try to do to others what you would like others to do to you. That also involves communication, Because if you don't have an understanding of your partner or the person you're having a relationship with, if you don't have an understanding or perhaps at least a discussion set before the actions take place, oh, I like to have my tea with 2 sugars in it, type of thing, even though that's very trivial, the certain points of how you conduct yourself in your daily life or how you like to be appreciated. That sort of information being communicated to establish reality, to give understanding to your partner and for you to receive understanding about your partner, the person you're having a relationship with. If you don't have communication, then you can't establish those points. Also, and I'm going to just use another trivial type of thing, I don't like to have my toast cooked until it's black. Toasted, cooked, whatever we're going to say. I don't like to have my coffee served with cream. I like to have it with milk. I don't like to have my tea bag stirred in the cup for more than 20 seconds because it makes it sour. All of those little points, yes, they're trivial, but they also apply to some of the more, let's say, involved or perhaps less spoken about aspects of life. It might have to do with your own hygiene. What do you consider as hygienic? As you're starting a relationship, these are usually the things, sometimes awkward and sometimes funny, that you encounter, is that people grow up and they get their, many times, they get their hygiene habits from their parents. And where did they get them from? Their parents. Certainly there is a lot more, let's say, scientific application of what is being healthy and that sort of thing, to people developing their own routines and looking at improving things. But having the conversations about values. What do you value? Do you want to hear about the day that your partner has had at work? I've seen it quite often that 2 people in a relationship, they agree that they don't want to talk about work because they're in a 9-to-5 job or they're at work all day and all they do is deal with work. And when they come home, what they don't want to talk about is work. I'm not sure if you've ever experienced that, but that is an agreement or a way that you would treat your partner or ask for your partner to be treating you that might be a very important part of your day to have you feel like you're separating your personal life from your work life, and that gives you space and it gives you, mental improvement or some at least better or more uplifting mood for the rest of your day when you're not at work. And so that might be some sort of agreement that you might make with your partner. It's like, listen, when we come home, I don't want to talk about work. Don't ask me any questions about work. I've been there for the last nearly 8 hours, and the last thing I want to talk about is blah. You can tell me about your day, but I don't want to have any questions about mine because I don't like talking about work. Or it could be the other way around. You might have a partner that wants to talk about the troubles and difficulties that they're having at work because they can't talk to anyone else at work about it. So whichever way that it is, establishing those realities with your partner are definitely points or a good part of the foundation for a healthy relationship. Okay, so next thing. Aside from communication being the most important point, as I mentioned, another thing is, of course, is to create the relationship. Now, when I say create the relationship, this is the sort of thing that you come across, or you may have heard before, where a person might talk about a relationship becoming stale after the initial honeymoon period, whatever that is spoken about these days, is the initial period. You meet each other, you're going for dinner, you're buying flowers, or you're buying gifts, or you're sending all these lovely love hearts and messages and different things like that. And then after a period of time, that kind of like slows down or even stops. So when I say create, that little analogy kind of helps explain it a little bit. So in the beginning, what were you doing? You were putting into the relationship effort towards improving the communication, providing gifts or things that the person wanted, perhaps things that help, lift their mood, improve their survival, change their environment, make it look prettier with some flowers, or maybe you bought them a book, some things like that. So that's doing things actively to improve the relationship, to create it, to make it survive better, and this sort of idea of exchange, all the things that I basically mentioned before. So creating a relationship doesn't stop. And basically continuing a relationship and making it healthy involves create, continuously creating that relationship so that it lasts. Now, you might see a relationship change, turn the page, move into a new chapter of life, whether it be involving kids, whether it be involving a new job or different career or different personal activities or recreational pursuits and things like this. But the point of those changes is that they are part of continuing to create the relationship, no matter what has also changed in your own life. And what that means for each partner or each person or each relationship you have could be different from one to the next. It might, and again, this is where that point on communication comes in. So what does it mean for that other person to continue to feel like they are appreciated, like they are helped, like they are continuing to survive or do better in life as a result of that relationship? So establishing those things of how that other person would like to be treated and how you would like to be treated, establishing those things helps you do the actions, get into the activities that are going to continue to create the relationship. Because of course, whilst the relationship may have come about initially because of convenience, maybe it came about because of, strong emotional connection or whatever it might have been, is the initiation of the relationship and sustaining it is based on agreements and using communication to further survival and further and improve a person with this exchange and help. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Continue to create the relationship, and all of the points that I said before that do apply. Okay, so another most important thing, I know there's a lot of important things, but this one does relate more to what I said very, very beginning. That we did webinars on breakups and misunderstandings and looked at how you repair them. And this is going to be the point that I end on. And what I want to say is you need to make up for shortcomings. Because the opposite of creating a relationship and making it improve is making a relationship fail or making a relationship reduce in its ability to be in communication. Let me say that a bit more clearly. So you forget to buy milk down the street, or you forget someone's birthday on time, or you didn't call when you were supposed to. Perhaps you didn't get something for someone and there was some sort of misunderstanding. Or maybe something happened where the other person doesn't know anything about the fact that you did something. So maybe you got a bonus at work, and then you decided that you would use that money to buy yourself a subscription to, maybe it was something that was perhaps for the family or that you really wanted. You needed to buy a new subscription to your internet security, or you put something on the computer and the other person didn't know about it, and you thought, oh, maybe I probably should have used that for the kids, or maybe I should have used that for the mother-in-law whose birthday is coming up. But in some way, you have withheld something that you didn't want known by the other person. Maybe it was something clearly wrong, maybe it wasn't something clearly wrong, but you didn't feel like communicating the fact that you did that thing to the person you're in a relationship with. Well, that is the beginning of withheld communication. And when you are withholding communication, you hold back to that degree and are therefore not creating or not putting into that relationship to that same degree. So any of your shortcomings, even if they're small, when you communicate them and you let them be known to the person you're in a relationship with, you can see what sort of detriment that was to the relationship. Did that person become concerned about it? Was it a big deal? Is it something, well, you may have actually done something that was seriously wrong. But then again, you making up for your shortcomings is a very, very important point. Making it known, and then doing the things to make up for the damage that may have been caused to the survival, to the goals, the purposes, or the environment of that person that you're in a relationship with, is that making up for your shortcomings and making up the damage for your shortcomings is a very important point, because life is definitely not always smooth sailing. And I'm sure you can think of many examples in your own life, if not then in others, where things didn't go exactly as they were planned. We're trying to survive, we're trying to do well, and we don't always come up with the best solution first up all of the time. Okay, so I'm going to shoot over to Michelle now and ask a question. She's probably following along, and see if there's any questions or comments that came up on any of the platforms there, YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook. And I see on Zoom we're all clear here. So if you have any questions or you want to make any comments, go ahead and put them into the chat now, as I just shoot a short message over to Michelle to check that we're all in the clear. Okay, so as I mentioned, just as I give Michelle a chance to respond there, this book, The Way to Happiness, is something that I thoroughly recommend. It has 21 different precepts, kind of like principles, that if you follow them, you are on the way to happiness, and how well you apply them to your life and get others around you to apply those precepts, those principles, is certainly something that could be proportionate to the success that you'll have in your life in achieving happiness. And it is, okay, good. So I got the response there from Michelle. So the link for this book will appear in the comment section for all the different platforms and also on Zoom. So if you're interested in finding out more, start with this book, see what L. Ron Hubbard has to say in more detail than I have presented just now, and pick yourself up a copy. And I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar, where we are going to deal with more and last subject on relationships. And that's all we have today. Shanae, we'll see you next time.